This is Burkina Faso, a nation that has been fighting a war for decades. Not a war of guns, not a war of soldiers, but a war against something far more ruthless: hunger. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré, hunger was not destiny. It was an enemy, and he vowed it could be defeated. He declared that Burkina Faso's true weakness was not its army, it was its land. Fertile soil, yes, but skies that betrayed it. Rain that came too little, too late, and without water, there can be no food. When a nation cannot feed itself, it becomes dependent. It must beg others for grain. It must accept food aid with conditions attached. And when another controls your food, they control your freedom. Captain Traoré understood this with burning clarity. A nation that cannot feed itself, he said, is on a leash, like a dog. You may call yourself free, but if you are hungry, you are not. And so, he turned to a weapon more powerful than guns: water. With water, you can grow food. With food, you can feed your people. And with food sovereignty, you can stand tall, beholden to no one. This vision was radically different from past leaders who signed foreign loans and hired foreign companies to build glittering projects that rarely solved real problems. They cost fortunes, took decades, and left ordinary people forgotten. Traoré chose a new battlefield, the fields of Burkina Faso. He declared that freedom would not be won in conference rooms abroad, but in the soil at home. His weapon was irrigation. Why now? Because time was running out. The Sahel was drying, drought struck harder each year, and famine loomed on the horizon. The old cycle of begging for aid had to be broken, once and for all. The world was stunned. Leaders were expected to ask for money, but Traoré said, "We will do this ourselves." His strategy was not charity. It was resistance. Resistance against a system where hunger itself was profitable for outsiders. And so, the government launched a bold project, repairing the Goularé Dam and channeling its waters into a vast new irrigation canal. But Traoré made a deliberate choice. He directed the first flow of water to the Barmer Plains. The Barmer Plains were both a curse and a promise, land rich in soil but cursed by drought. Long abandoned, a symbol of broken promises. Traoré chose it precisely because it was hard, because it mattered. If Barmer could bloom, the nation would believe again. This was how the Barmer Canal was born. Not just as a construction, but as a statement. It would be the longest irrigation canal in Africa, bringing water to thousands of acres. Rice, vegetables, and grains would flourish where dust once reigned. But the true revolution was not only in the water, it was in how the canal was built. Normally, Africa's great projects are outsourced. Foreign companies bring foreign engineers, foreign machines, and take foreign profits. The locals are left with scraps. Traoré rejected this model completely. He declared, "This canal will be built by Burkinabé hands, for Burkinabé people." The engineers were local, the workers local, the sweat, the urgency, the pride, all local. And to prove his belief, he put the project on a deadline: 8 months, not years, not decades. Hungry people cannot wait. Independence cannot wait. Work began like a military operation, the roar of cement mixers before sunrise, floodlights keeping workers on site deep into the night. Every delay treated as a national emergency. This was no ordinary project. It was a race for dignity, and something extraordinary happened. Families who had left their villages, forced away by famine, began to return. They returned not to beg for aid, but to reclaim their land. As water flowed, dignity returned with it. The Barmer Canal was no crude ditch. It was modern, built with solar-powered pumps, smart valves, and sensors to conserve every drop. Warehouses, roads, and water stations rose alongside it, and every piece was designed to be owned. Not by foreign corporations, but by the people themselves. And so the canal became more than water. It became food sovereignty. With its fields revived, Burkina Faso is set to produce tens of thousands of tons of grain each year. Every grain of rice grown on its soil is one step away from dependency. Every harvest is a declaration of freedom. For the first time, farming was treated not as poverty, but as national security. Food became power. Onions and rice became weapons of diplomacy, stronger than tanks. Because a country that feeds itself cannot be blackmailed. A country with surplus grain gains respect. But the revolution did not stop at the fields. It spread into the people. Over 2,000 jobs have already been created directly from the project. Welders, masons, engineers, technicians, all Burkinabé, building not just a canal, but a nation. Vocational schools opened nearby, training a generation in water management, solar power, and modern farming. Young people who once fled to overcrowded cities or risked their lives crossing borders now stayed. They stayed not because they had to, but because they saw a future worth building. This was more than construction. It was rebirth, a rebirth of land, of people, of pride. For the first time in decades, Burkinabé workers looked at their government and saw results. Not promises, not corruption, but proof. The Barmer Canal is not just an irrigation project. It is a revolution of people and pride, of hunger turned to strength, of dependency turned to power. At its heart lies a simple truth. The people of Burkina Faso will build Burkina Faso. This is not just about water. It is about dignity. It is about a nation, once sidelined, finally standing tall, building its future with its own two hands.